So the question is, what's the deal with Trump and these black women? No, not these black women. We'll get to these guys a little later, but let's first take a look at the thumbnail. I might have crammed so many pictures in there, you might not have been able to see the large number of black women. So I just want to show you this collage I put together. These were just the ones I could think of off the top of my head. So initially I was just going to do a Brady Bunch type style, but this is not a fun topic. This is not a fun time. We can still have some fun, but I didn't want to make the situation look comical because the original title for this video was Trump Hates Black Women and Men. So I consider this a serious issue. But this thing with black women is one of those things that initially you kind of see it and you kind of register it, but you don't want to say it's a thing because he's got so many things that it's like, well, not one more thing I need to monitor. But this is definitely a thing, and it's escalating, right? This is almost a George Floyd type situation where no matter how many videos of cops shooting black men, American whites just wouldn't buy it. They had to see a white cop kill a black man. And even with that, to this day, they're trying to rewrite the history of the actual videotape. Oh, it was fentanyl. To this day. So at this point, you might be wondering, why would Trump have something against so many black women? Well, we can all agree he's racist, but in the big scheme of things, that's okay. No problem, no foul. There are so many white people, in fact, too many white people in this country that are racist, that it's not really surprising to us. It's nothing we haven't dealt with. It's nothing out of the ordinary. But he seems to really be fixated on black women. And I got to wondering, why? And there are two obvious reasons that come to my mind. The first reason is the voting situation. Obviously, as a guy who's run for president now 3 times, his access to voting data is top tier. I mean, he gets the most precise voting data on the planet. And so there's no way in hell he has missed the obvious voting habits of black women. And it has consistently been anti-Trump. He can see it. He knows it. And if voting is a symbolic representation of affirmation, then black women are saying, we do not like you. And that brings us to the second issue, which is that historically, black women don't take no shit. Now, as a man who has spent a lifetime around black women and slept with a lot of white women, I can tell you, there's a shit I can do with those. Well, let's just say, all I'm going to say is black women don't take no shit. And if there's anything we know about Trump is that head to toe, he is full of shit. He is a bullshitter of the highest caliber. And all he deals in is bullshit. So if black women don't take no shit, we have a serious problem, a conflict of interest. He is a distributor of shit and they won't accept shit. So we have an impasse. Don't worry, I'm going to go into more specific women in a minute. I just want to talk about these numbers that came out. This show this huge rising unemployment of black women. I've heard the numbers 300,000. I've even heard 350,000 job loss for black women under Trump. But the person who wrote this article from the Economic Policy Institute thinks it's an overcount. But as a guy who actually worked for the Department of Commerce at one point in the Census Bureau, numbers like this typically don't include data from people who don't participate. So to me, it might be an undercount. Whatever the real number is, it's a lot of people. And I believe was part of his vindictive vendetta against black women. Something he actually could do to black women was attack federal agencies, not just as recipient of various programs, but as workers. See, since President Johnson, who himself had a black secretary for like 20 years, black women have had high numbers in government. And who knows that fact? Everybody. Everybody knows black women have government jobs. So I believe that was a big part of the completely useless Doge quote unquote cuts, which save no money and which will probably cost us more money when it's all said and done. But it's definitely reduced services that people need. And that's pain people won't really feel immediately, but it's a pain that will come up later. But I believe the loss of jobs was a direct attack on black women. In fact, he's basically put a tariff on black women. He knows a lot of black women work for the government, and that is why he let Elon Musk his way through our country with Doge. So one racist used another racist to do his work. Quick change of topics. As you can see from my low numbers, this is a brand new channel and I need help.
By the way, I ask that you stop by my channel, look at the videos, go to my Buy Me a Coffee link because that's where PDF transcripts will be eventually. And lastly, to check out the shirts on the website.
But to see all of this Trump behavior in a larger context, we need to look back on an early candidate, or should I say contestant, Omarosa. Wow, remember her? This is a very unique situation because the general consensus on her is unfavorable. I'm not saying she's an enemy of the state. I'm just saying I don't really know any Omarosa fans or see them online, but she has a strangely surprising Wikipedia page, which says she allegedly worked for the Clinton administration. She said she was a stellar employee and did all kinds of great stuff. They say it was really the worst hire they ever had. But she also says in those days she was a full-blown Democrat, lifelong. This kind of sounds like the Candace Owens story, right? It's funny, isn't it? But an interesting quirk of history is that, for all intents and purposes, she and Trump came up together. I mean, in 2004, she's on that show's first season. So America came to know both of them in a television sense at the same time. I had, of course, had many years of experience of Trump during my New York years. I moved there in my late teens, so I was there for a lot of the 80s. So my knowledge of him is like a standard New Yorker. I've despised him for a long time. But back to Omarosa. As an early pre-social media influencer, in those days we called them reality stars. At some point, she came to be a fan of Trump and then eventually part of the Trump administration in some capacity. You can go check it out on the Wikipedia page. But the most important thing about her to me was the quote, "Every critic, every detractor will have to bow down to President Trump. It's everyone who's ever doubted Donald, whoever disagreed, whoever challenged him. It's the ultimate revenge to become the most powerful man in the universe." God damn. Say what you want. That phrase, that idea has been the world's psyche ever since, because that was the first time somebody had ever voiced and put into words the thing that we have all seen come to pass. It's been absolutely true. Nobody else has so blatantly said the actual words of what he's actually doing. Every critic, every detractor will have to bow down for his ultimate revenge. It's shocking how accurate she was. So, like I said, the consensus view on her is generally unfavorable, but that is an insight and a willingness to say those words out loud that are, for all intents and purposes, historical. Because that's the foundation of Trump, revenge. He's the ultimate aggrieved white. But his consistent enemy, other than black women, has been Obama. By the way, we might as well add Michelle to the list. What up, Chicago? Because he has shit on her for years. Even that paving over the Rose Garden seems to be a specific thing to do directed at her. In all these years, other targets of his hate have come and gone, but he stays on black women's ass. And maybe Rosie O'Donnell. But he's been playing the long game. He's been trying to either catch up with Obama's accomplishments, denigrate what he did, or erase as much of his history and to basically outshine Obama. And one of those ways Trump copied Obama was Obama's success on social media. I know a lot of people think Obama is the first social media president, but Obama and other politicians used social media, but they hadn't weaponized it. The reason Republican politicians fear Trump is because they're afraid he's going to attack them in either regular television and newspaper media, or the quickest method, social media, where he can do a thing, say a thing that day, and have immediate reaction and response of a threat fulfilled that night. He is the biggest online bully in history. If you don't do this thing, then I'm going to do this thing to you. So it's a threat economy. In a future episode, I'll dig more into his combined use of extortion, intimidation, and bribes. He loves the bribes. But for now, this brings me to a point I'd like to clarify, which is that Trump uses the mob in two different ways. He's able to incite an online mob to come after people, and he's able to incite an actual physical mob, like we saw these wild boys on January 6th. But like I said, I lived in New York City during the 80s, where I got to encounter the actual mob, what we think of in terms of the Italian mafia. And as you saw with Jimmy Kimmel's situation, he had the FCC guy hand down basically a mob hit on a TV personality. And that's what he's been doing repeatedly, handing down mob hits. He goes after this guy, he goes after that woman, he goes after anybody. And it's all strong-arm mob tactics. And here's the thing, he also uses mob tactics in terms of inciting people. I got to see this in the 80s. I got to see racial mobs get whipped up in a city that was cool. Look, nobody ever called New York a harmonious place, but people actually accepted people on face value. Not so much racial values like Chicago, which is where I was from, and it was more openly racist. All right, let's go back to black women. I'm kind of going to walk through this group of women, almost beauty fashion style. And yeah, I know it's sexist, but I'm definitely an imperfect messenger. This is just a subject that I wanted to dig into. First up, Yamiche Alcindor. I think it was when she was working for PBS NewsHour that she was originally started having these troubles with Trump. Maybe back in 2020, she was asking him, why are you calling the corona the Kung flu? And what was he doing about black people being affected by corona at a much higher rate than anybody else? And why had he disbanded the pandemic response team in 2018? So he really started going in on her, calling her nasty and threatening. Then there was Joy Reid, a lot of back and forth with Trump. And then Trump's border guy called her dumber than a box of rocks. I want to highlight that this guy, who's actually currently being accused of being part of an FBI sting for taking $50,000 in cash in a bag to get people jobs in the administration. There's apparently videotape out there of this. This is the guy calling a black woman or anybody dumber than a box of rocks who took a bag of cash on tape from the FBI in a sting. That guy. And of course, Trump's heavy on Jasmine Crockett. Back and forth again for the last few months. And most recently with a low IQ comment, which is stuff that Charlie Kirk said about black women too. He also had a particular thing with black women, but this is the problem with promoting white supremacy. By definition, you believe you're supreme and that other groups are not supreme. White supremacy. That's how it works. There was another episode, another Trump situation. I can't remember the time and place, so I can't search for it. But Trump went to some black event. It wasn't the Detroit church thing. It was some other thing. Like maybe it was Flint, but he was supposedly brought there to talk about one thing, like maybe the water or something. But he started talking about his campaign or his enemies or how he should be president. And a black lady just said, okay, thank you, and shut him down. He just meekly crumbled and went, okay, I'm sorry, and stopped talking. And I think that really embarrassed him. But I cannot remember the event. But you got to see it. Without the U.S. government at his back, you get to see what he's like with no power. Just like, yeah, that's just the guy. Speaking of the Midwest. So he came here to Chicago, right here in my hometown, to face the National Association of Black Journalists. And oh my goodness, he had a whole lot to say about how nasty their questions were. Man, with him, it's always about the nasty questions if they're by women, especially if it's black women. This guy and nasty black women. I'd love to see what his online porn history looks like because it's so specific. Well, I don't want to really see it, but he keeps with the nasty. All right. Let's say he didn't do too bad with attacks when he was out of office. He had a little back and forth with Karine Jean-Pierre, but mostly their fight flared up when he said Kamala Harris is not black. But yeah, I mean, Kamala, man, she was really right up his alley in terms of the perfect embodiment of an enemy, a physical, breathing black woman. And his agreement was in full force. His argument is that he always believes he's not getting a fair chance in life. This guy who's been given so much handed to him believed that the switch from Biden to Harris wasn't fair. She's only got 107 days to run. But to him, it wasn't fair. He'd been running for office for 10 years, but okay, it's not fair. He's like, oh man, she was an Indian, now she's black. How am I going to win against a black? But to him, everything is aggrievement. He's the victim, the poor, aggrieved whites of America, never getting a fair shot in this country, held down for so long. Anyway, let's see. Also, while he was in office, the Fani Willis thing came up, right? All that election meddling, which he clearly and openly had done, again, on tape. She laid the charges down and everything was good to go. A lot of back and forth attacks, but then it became a who can outmaneuver who battle. And she was winning the battle. And it looked like everything was going to move forward, despite the fact that it was Georgia. So she was fighting a Republican everything. But then her personal life got into the situation. And now I think it was just this past week, they're not going to allow her personally to handle the case. So those fucking Republicans aren't going to follow through. So that case is pretty much dead. Along the same lines, we had two black women who really got put through the ringer, the Trump ringer. You have no idea how difficult it was for me to just get AI to create two black women silhouettes. This is the best I could do. They don't look like the silhouettes, but I didn't want to show their faces because the whole issue is that they were falsely accused of messing around with the election, which they obviously did not. Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss, they got doxxed and then repeatedly attacked online and in person. They had their house and their whole safety situation threatened. So I don't want to put their actual pictures up, but Rudy Giuliani was the one who ultimately did the most on Trump's behalf. So he's the one who lost in court. I forget what the settlement was, but it was, $40 million, $100 million, whatever it was. And Trump spent months really accusing these women of all kinds of stuff. And again, he used his mob, his online mob and his physical mob to really go after them personally. And I believe the case went through the New York court. So I'm pretty sure it was Letitia James who was the attorney general. Speaking of her, it was also while he was out of office that the whole situation with Letitia James started, right? So she's the one who was attorney general in New York, and I believe allowed the Rudy Giuliani case with the daughter and mother go through. But also she filed charges on Trump for the wealth inflation fraud issue, which he would say, my property is worth this much, my net worth is this much, when he was trying to get loans and stuff. But then when he would say on his income, oh, I only have this much for his tax filing. So he kept messing around with his wealth level, which resulted, I think it was like $360 million judgment, but it ended up being like $500 million. The headline was, New York Attorney General wins huge fraud verdict against Trump, Letitia James during a press conference September 21, 2022. And Letitia was also there for the E. Jean Carroll case, and that also cost him $83 million. The sexual assault defamation suit, Trump lost that one. At any rate, at this point, he's been after Letitia nonstop. And of course, now he's got trumped up charges. I mean, literally trumped up charges about her mortgage paperwork, which has turned into a domino effect and destroying the whole court system out there because nobody thinks the charges are valid. So they're quitting, they're resigning, they're being fired and replaced by people who are not qualified, as usual. Well, I'm going to get to Trump's consistent hiring of unqualified and incompetent people in a different episode. But speaking of legal stuff, I think we can safely predict he'll do something involving Katanja, Katanja Brown Jackson. I got this name all wrong on the Supreme Court. Katanji. Okay. I think we can safely predict he'll do something involving Katanja Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court. It's inevitable. One of those judges are going to die or quit or something, and somehow, some way, she'll be the focus of Trump's ire. He has to. His broken brain, his racism fixation will make him do it. But Trump has been this whole term having the economy die on him, or rather he's been killing the economy. And one of the focal points of his anger has been Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed. But Jerome is like, I'm not quitting and you can't fire me. So he's been holding strong. So since he couldn't go after Jerome, Trump was like, well, is there anybody I can take somebody out? And of course, it's like, is there anybody black? Is there anybody a woman? And there just happened to be. Her name is Lisa Cook. So he's going after her. Again, trumped up charges. Somehow, if he can't get Powell, he's like, all right, I'm going to get somebody on your team. And he didn't choose a white man. He chose the first black woman who's ever been a Fed governor in history. And, oh my God, he's trying the same mortgage paperwork attack. Here's the funny part. It's been shown that several people in his cabinet have the same paperwork problem. And get this guy, I want to call him Bill Poot. This is the guy in charge of the department. Literally has the same issue, claiming his home versus his summer home. This is literally, he's got this problem. He's accusing somebody of a crime he is currently committing. And also, it was kind of a blip on the radar. I think this past week he called another black reporter obnoxious. I mean, damn, he is hard on black women. Well, most black women. He made some exceptions once. I'll get to that in a second, but I just want to switch to a few more of the people Trump's gone after. In an effort to denigrate the black mayors around the country, he sent troops to Los Angeles, where Karen Bass is, and he's called her all kind of names when she was in Congress, and especially during the California fire episode. Remember the wildfires? And then he said, okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the mayor of Chicago because it's a black person. But it was a man. You know, our mayor is Brandon Johnson, so we didn't get the troops like Los Angeles did. However, Washington, D.C. did get the actual troops. And again, with a black woman, Muriel Bowser. But, you know, this was kind of a situation that's a little hard to stomach. I mean, she initially was resistant, and there was some back and forth, him calling her names, et cetera, the usual black woman attack stuff. But she did a thing, you know, let's call it political, where she said, oh my goodness, the city is so much better since you, big, strong man, President Trump, solved all of our problems. And then, of course, his response was, you say nice things to me as a black woman, you're okay. And so, you know, it got the troops out. So, you know, we just have to eat it. That's what happened. But this brings us back to Diamond and Silk. Can you believe it's been like 10 years since these two hit the scene? I don't want to crap on these ladies. On the one hand, they were early adopters. I mean, nobody knew there was such a thing as black Trump supporters when they first came out. It was bizarre. They had this specific look. But like I said, I don't want to hit too hard on these ladies. One of them died. I honestly couldn't tell you which one is Diamond and which one is Silk, but one of them is no longer with us. But they had the foresight to be effusive and doting. Initially, I think they were unpaid. I don't know if they were eventually paid or something, what happened to their pockets. But we've seen now, years later, there are so many people who got on board the Trump train because it just leads to money, a.k.a. the grift. And there is the occasional black woman, outlier. There was this woman from Angola who just happened to have a look that Trump liked. Again, I would love to see this guy's internet search history because this happened and it was such a strange thing. Here's an article. Haryana Victoria spoke to President Trump in honor of the peace agreement signed by Rwanda and Democratic Republic of Congo. Haryana Victoria told Trump his efforts were felt in the continent and that her president would consider nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. So Trump says, I shouldn't say this because it's politically incorrect. She's beautiful, Trump said. I'm not allowed to say that, you know. That could be the end of my political career. He joked. Of course he joked. But yeah, he had positive comments about her because she made positive comments about him. It's super clear what you have to do, a.k.a. the mayor of D.C. And, of course, that exclusion for Diamond and Silk, who just slavish love on him. Final thoughts? I know, in this era of black men going Republican and red pill and manosphere, the idea of quote-unquote defending women is seen as the ultimate act of pandering, and that would make me a panda bear, or worse, Captain Save-A-Ho. But A, these women aren't hoes. B, they're all more accomplished than me. And C, they don't need me, some random brother from Chicago, to quote-unquote defend them. But this is about and isn't about them. It's about this fucking maniac. And I just want to take one sliver of his psychosis, just a tiny thing, and isolate this one fixation he has. And like I said, I'm not the ideal candidate for the job. I'm just a dude playing a dude, pretending to be another dude.